Welcome to today's event. My name is Jessica Dumas. I'm the chairperson for the Winnipeg Chamber of Commerce and president of Jessica Dumas Coaching and Training. Before we start, I'd like to recognize on behalf of the Chamber that this message comes to you from Treaty 1 territory, homeland of the Ojibwe, Cree, Oji Cree, Dakota, and Dene nations, and homeland of the Red River Métis. Thanks so much for joining us, everyone, to the kickoff of our Winnipeg Chamber of Commerce Luncheon series. Each month we come together to connect and hear from leading experts across North America to address important issues facing your business. Typically, the kickoff of our event season would mean all of us would be gathering in person in Winnipeg's beautiful downtown. But while that's not possible, we look forward to offering this new virtual luncheon experience to you at no cost. Today's virtual programming is set up to reflect your usual in-person luncheon experience. For example, as you logged in today, you hopefully saw the networking tab on the left-hand side. There you can enter one-on-one video sessions with other attendees, or if you prefer, you can visit the many different member booths by clicking on the Expo tab. Maybe you have a particular client or even a prospective one that you want to connect with, and now's your chance. As you would scan the room and tap them on the shoulder during a luncheon, you can do so virtually from the comfort of your office or your home. Simply click on the people list on the right-hand side and send them a private message. These are just a few of the features that we have available for you to connect and grow your network, all from your home office or at the office. If you have any technical issues today, please contact any of the Chamber staff or volunteers through the chat on the right-hand side. They are listed as WCC Help under Attendee List. Before I welcome our keynote, I wanted to say a special thank you to our sponsors, our title sponsor, BDC, our registration sponsor, Payworks, and our networking sponsor, StaffMax Staffing and Recruiting. We encourage you to get involved via social media and join us in the conversation by using hashtag WCCBiz. We'll be jumping into our fireside chat with Michael shortly, but before doing that, I just want to explain how today's luncheon is going to work. The first half of today's program will be a fireside chat with Michael. For the second half, you as an attendee will be joining a breakout session with 9 other members, just like you would at a table of 10, to debrief and discuss what you've learned today. So stay tuned. I'll provide more detailed instructions after the fireside chat. Let's get started. Michael Denham is President and CEO of BDC, Canada's only bank devoted exclusively to entrepreneurs. For those of you who may not know, BDC supports small and medium-sized businesses in all industries, no matter what stage that they're in. They do this by proving financial advisory services and capital. Michael is a strong advocate for entrepreneurship and innovation. He's a seasoned business leader with more than 30 years of senior management experience. Welcome, Michael.
Jessica, thank you. Thanks for having me.
At the beginning of this pandemic, BDC was called to be at the forefront to provide financial relief efforts for small businesses. Can you tell us a little bit about what that was like for BDC and your team?
Sure. And Jessica, it's nice to kind of almost or virtually be in Winnipeg with you. And I just want to, before I answer the question, kind of commend you and compliment you and the team for kind of finding a way to do this. You're showing great creativity and great resilience. And I know the Chamber has such an important role in by doing what you're doing, creating an opportunity for folks to continue to network and stay in touch and learn, which these days is so important. So thanks for having me, and thanks for having been so thoughtful in designing the session for your members. So to answer the question, if you kind of go back to mid-March, and this is a little bit of ancient history given all that we've been through, the first thing that the federal government did as part of its response, because things were happening so quickly, was they put some capital into BDC. And as you mentioned in the introduction, we're a Crown corporation. We focus on small business. We have about 70,000 clients now across the country. And this capital was designed to give us the means to lend more. So what happened within the first 3 weeks we had as many requests for loans coming into BDC as we normally do in a year. And you can imagine how that felt, because all of our folks were kind of working from home. From the first Monday of the crisis, we went from home. Our folks, by their DNA, kind of bend over backwards to do all they can to help entrepreneurs. And we had this massive surge in demand we had to deal through. So it was crazy for us, as you can imagine. We did our best to respond as quickly as we could to meet the needs of our clients. In the process, we agreed with about 40,000 of our clients to kind of postpone the principal payments on their loan to give them more cash flow. And we introduced some new products, which were meant to be more accessible, more attractive rates, better features, to make working capital loans, which were the key thing at the time, more available. So things are a lot calmer now. We did our best to respond. I don't think we responded as quickly as a lot of our entrepreneurs wanted us to, but again, we did our best based on this massive volume. And in retrospect, we feel quite good about the many thousands of entrepreneurs we're able to help.
Excellent, that's great to hear. Can you tell us about some of the specific support measures that are available to entrepreneurs?
Sure, Jessica. I think a lot of people listening would be aware of these because they've been in place for a long time now. But there's the wage subsidy program from the federal government. I'll focus on federal programs. There's the what's called the CEBA, the Emergency Business Account Program, which keeps getting, I think, improved and enhanced to make it more accessible to entrepreneurs. There's a rent relief program that's been announced. And then we have put in place a number of programs that are going to continue to be in place for a while. Loans, working capital loans that entrepreneurs can get from us directly. And then we're partnering with literally kind of dozens of the chartered banks across the country where they are making loans available. We're providing 80% of the money and taking 80% of the risk. And the hope is this program is called BCAP, the Business Credit Availability Program. And the hope is, Jessica, through this, that banks do take more risk and make more credit available to their existing clients.
Definitely a need for entrepreneurs. I'm happy to hear that. Your team at BDC really serves as partners to a lot of entrepreneurs growing their business. Do you have any recent client stories that show how businesses can pivot and grow their business in a time of like what we've seen recently?
Sure. And I would bet that a number of folks listening right now probably have great examples of pivoting and finding a way to keep things moving during this crisis. That's probably an interesting topic to share in the breakout discussions afterwards. And again, we have about almost 2,000 clients here in Manitoba, about $1 billion of loans outstanding. And there are lots and lots of examples of companies that have done their best in what have been unbelievably difficult circumstances. So one, for example, a client called Rick Kemp, his business is Next Dimension. He, a local entrepreneur, he's in the business of event planning and trade shows. So he set up booths and things like that at trade shows, but hasn't been a trade show for a long time. So what Rick was able to do was kind of pivot his business to make it more of a one-stop shop for PPE requirements. And the kind of plexiglass, the materials that folks need, they can now get through him. So again, he took advantage of a good platform, a good business base, and recognized that he had a lot to build on. He's have to shift his business to where there's demand. And as we all know, there's tons of demand for PPE. There's another place, a restaurant you probably know called Salisbury House Sols, which is a great restaurant, been around for 90 years. And kind of go back to March and April, restaurants were shut down. And they were able to initially do takeout, which they'd never done. They put in place an online presence, and a lot of restaurateurs have done this as well. And that allowed them to kind of bridge through to today, which, though not back to normal, at least they're at 50% capacity. And then another one, Jessica, it's a very small company called Just the Good Skincare. Mylena Lai is in charge of it, and she had one employee, which she had to let go in the early days. But it's a skincare product that largely exists online. And what became very clear to all of us is that online sales actually took off for all sorts of obvious reasons back in the April-May timeframe. So her business, which she was really worried about, is now in great shape. And she's hired back that one employee, kind of hired more, and is just working with us to put in place a kind of financing to establish some commercial property. So I think a lot of the folks who are listening that have had or have now significant online presence probably are seeing how helpful this channel to market has become.
Absolutely. Those are great stories, really inspiring. Can you tell us, how would you describe the entrepreneur situation and the impact that it's had on Winnipeg and Manitoba compared to entrepreneurs in other areas of Canada?
You would all know this, but when I look at Manitoba and Winnipeg and I compare it to all the other provinces in the country, what jumps out is just how diversified and how balanced your economy is here. And that always, I think, takes out some of the cycles and allows for more economic stability in this part of the world. And we see that. So for example, when we offered postponements on payments to all of our clients, 50% of our clients across the country accepted it because they knew they needed to preserve their cash flow. Only 11% in Manitoba did. And I think that is evidence of the fact that they saw a little bit more stability and a little bit more certainty of payments here. If you look at the overall economic picture, 70% of the jobs lost since March have come back in Manitoba. The national average is closer to 60%. Unemployment here is 8.1%. Nationally, it's 10. So no part of the country is in a great position right now, far from it. But Manitoba seems to have come back a little bit more rapidly than other parts of the country. And again, going forward, the public health situation is probably going to be the big determinant of how all parts of the country continue to evolve.
Great, that's more good news. I think that's also reassuring for entrepreneurs who continue to struggle, but to hear that you're doing well, you know, it's kind of like that pat on the back to say, keep doing what you're doing. That's good to hear. All right, what are a few critical steps that businesses need to do today to sustain their business through the coming days?
Yeah, I mean, every business is different, but there are three things that I encourage entrepreneurs to look at. The first and most obvious point, which I think every entrepreneur I've talked to has done, is make sure that the work environment is safe in terms of PPE, social distancing, protection, et cetera, because that is just so critically important in so many ways. The second thing is I encourage entrepreneurs to use the term kind of hire back better. And a lot of companies, small companies, had opportunities to streamline, to fix, to improve, to simplify. But it was frankly hard to do while they were going flat out up until March. Things have slowed down now, and there is a bit of an opportunity to do some of these things. And as a result, as employees come back, they come back to a much leaner, much simpler, much better business. And that's also an important thing to do, so that people do need to hire back, but hire back better, to use the term. And then lastly, and I just mentioned this point, I think it's become hopefully obvious to all business leaders how important it is to have an online presence. And I saw some stat from our chief economist a few weeks ago, which actually staggered me. And since they're chief economist, I believe it. Is it something like over 50% of all Canadians made their first online transaction sometime between now and March. And guess what? They liked it. So I think more and more, this is going to become the way that the kind of transactions take place, the business gets conducted. Canada's been behind. If you look at the level of retail transactions done through e-commerce versus other countries, I think we are going to rapidly catch up. And I just encourage everybody listening to make sure that he or she is ready and the businesses are prepared and able to take advantage.
Interesting. It's also funny to hear, sometimes you don't think of the activities that are being tracked for records like this. So that's interesting to hear. And Michael, how do you see the economy and the recovery going forward in Winnipeg and the rest of Canada? So what should business owners expect and what to see from the future?
So, people talk about the different, everyone's a different letter for the economy, right? We hoped it was going to be a V. They were worried it was going to be an L. Some people think it may be a W as the public health situation arose. I heard actually a pretty good term the other day, I think maybe on CNBC, they talked about a K-shaped recovery. meaning there are a lot of sectors, food processing, for example, technology, for example, that are actually, look at NASDAQ right now, for example, that are actually in a better place today than they were going back to March. And that's the kind of the top part of the letter K, where some sectors are coming back. We shouldn't be concerned. They'll probably get, in short order, to a better place than they were. However, the other part of the K refers to businesses that frankly do require kind of a certain amount of density and people. So retail, accommodation, tourism, restaurants, etc. Again, the recovery has been very slow, as many of you would know firsthand. As we get into the fall, there are worries about public health, etc. So I do worry that there's going to be part of the economy that does continue to struggle. And when you put these things together, on average, kind of in a macro sense, we've run a lot of scenarios, but there are some scenarios that don't see Canada getting back to its overall level of GDP that we had until late 22, early 23. So I think we need to be prepared for a long, kind of choppy recovery. And we can get into this later, but we're making sure that we're prepared to provide that type of support over time, because for many companies, it is going to take a while to get back to the way things were.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. We have a question from Lauren Remillard, the Winnipeg Chamber President and CEO.
Hello, Michael, and thanks for joining us for the kickoff luncheon of our 2021 Luncheon series. The issues of diversity, inclusion, and social justice are by no means new issues. However, developments south of the border, globally, and even in our own backyard have brought these issues to the forefront in very stark terms. My question is, how is BDC itself dealing with these issues in its own operations? And why is it imperative that businesses embrace the opportunity for diversity and inclusion in their own operations?
Lauren, thanks for the question. It's so it's not just topical; it's really important. And what I'd like to do is describe what we're doing on two fronts. The first front is what we're doing to help entrepreneurs, so that all entrepreneurs, regardless of background, have access to what they need to succeed. And then I'll talk about what we're doing internally. On the first category, if you look at the stats, like it or not, you look at the stats, there are certain subsets of Canadians that do have a hard time getting access to the financing they need to grow their businesses. It's certainly been true with women over the years, and we put in place a pretty extensive program to support women both through loans and equity investments. But it's equally pronounced with respect to other groups, most notably Indigenous Canadians and Black Canadians. So we recognize that, and a key part of our role as BDC is to make sure that all entrepreneurs in Canada have access to what they need to grow their businesses. So we have a group within BDC called our Indigenous Business Unit, which is composed of people spread across the country that's singularly focused on providing loans and support and advice to Indigenous entrepreneurs. And we have some very specific products that we structured our financial solutions to make them kind of relevant and attractive. At the same time, we're also working on a financial structure with a group called NACA, which is the National Aboriginal Capital Corporation. And through NACA, we will work through dozens of the AFIs, the Aboriginal Financial Institutions network in the country. And the hope of all this is to get more liquidity, more financing available to these financial institutions so that they in turn can lend on to Indigenous-led businesses. So that's a very important stream that we're involved in that is meant to get more financing moving. And more recently, for Black Canadians, we signed up to what's called the Black North Initiative. I gave a CEO pledge on that, where I committed myself and BDC to certain actions internally. And as part of that, we're going to put in place some financial solutions, both early stage equity for Black entrepreneurs looking for venture capital money, as well as a lending program. So that's a snapshot of what we're trying to do to ensure and encourage access to financing on the part of the rich set of diverse entrepreneurs in this country. And at the same time, we have taken steps internally in terms of our culture, succession planning, hiring, promotion, et cetera, not just to allow ourselves to be more diverse, but to make sure that we are more inclusive, because it's only when you're fully inclusive that you can kind of retain that richness that comes along with diversity. And it makes us a better place. And I think everybody should realize that you need to tap into the best possible talent you have access to, which means tapping into all Canadians, which by definition means your business performance will be driven by being more diverse and more inclusive. So, Lord, you've asked a great question, and I think it's so important for all of us to think hard about this.
Great, good to hear that response, thank you. Can you tell us, and you mentioned a little bit earlier about some of how businesses are adjusting, can you tell us what are some top small business trends that you expect to see in the new normal, if there's other things that you can mention?
Yeah. So I referred to a couple of these. I do think the trend around more e-commerce presence, more online sales is going to be very important. Two, I do think that we will see a reshaping of supply chains, especially as it relates to healthcare, to make them more local. And there are lots of efforts underway in many Canadian cities to make supply chains more local, which makes them more durable, more line of sight, which is good. And I think that is a trend that a lot of SMEs, especially those involved in the food sector, should take advantage of. And I do think that any crisis, such as what we're enduring, should make people revisit the importance of having a diversified business mix. And all too often, Jessica, companies have one client or sell to one sector. And when crises like this one or other ones happen, the more exposed you are to a single customer or a single part of the economy, the more risk you're putting on your business. So I think it also is a good wake-up call for all of us to think about making sure we have many clients in many regions, many parts of the province, et cetera, so that we have a more durable business in the event that we have a kind of crisis, not like this, but a crisis or economic cycle that affects us.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. Now let's talk a little bit about the conversation of consumer behavior. How has the pandemic changed how consumers are interacting with small businesses, in addition to recognizing, supporting local businesses?
This is the one of the big questions that is going to, I think, determine the pace with which the overall economy returns. I don't know about you, Jessica, but I've been basically kind of locked inside my house or near my house going back to March, even though the summer's been nice. I personally felt, even though I love to support entrepreneurs, I personally felt a little bit of a reticence to get back into the way I used to do things in terms of traveling and shopping and dining out, et cetera. And I think millions of Canadians are in the same category. We know that we want to get back to normal. We know it's important for the economy to get back to normal, but we're worried. And I think as long as there are public health issues, we're going to remain worried. So I think it's every country is different. I think your situation in Winnipeg, frankly, has been a whole lot better than our situation in Montreal going back the past number of months. But I do think it's going to take a lot of time, and entrepreneurs need to be prepared for that until consumers get back into their normal way of doing things and traveling and buying and gathering. I think it's just going to take a long time till we get back into that mode. So that's not good news, but I think it is realistic. And I think we just need to be prepared for that type of slow pace, which I think is going to underpin a relatively, for certain sectors, slower paced recovery than all of us would like.
Absolutely, totally agreed. All right, Michael, on your BDC website, your team has compiled a library of tools and resources to help businesses overcome this crisis. If you had to pick just 3 that stand out to you, what are they and why should businesses check them out?
So for those that haven't gone to our website, we get millions of visitors every year. There's a section called Articles and Tools, which is almost everything you'd need to know to tackle the business challenges you're faced with. It's really rich stuff. But there are three that I'd recommend. The first is it's called Business Planning Tools for Entrepreneurs. And it just helps you think about what to do now, given all the uncertainty that is with us. Second thing I would do, refer people to go to, is the section on digital and online. I made the point before about how important this is going to be, and there are some very practical steps that can be taken, lessons learned to help everybody get more aware of what to do to establish themselves online. And then thirdly, in there are lots of simulations and tools around cash flow management. And I do think that as we get into the fall, Jessica, and as the charter banks, and they've done this already, stop the postponement of payments, and as some of the government programs morph or change, I do worry, and I do think that the cash situation that entrepreneurs face that may have been okay over the course of the summer may become tighter. And I would encourage everybody just to have the discipline of going through their cash flow models and cash flow projections, not on a wishful thinking basis, but frankly on a status quo or even pessimistic basis, so they can begin to see if there is a risk around their cash flows, what could trigger that risk around cash flows, so they can begin to act sooner rather than later. And again, there are lots of modeling and simulation and spreadsheet types of tools available through bdc.ca that could serve as a kind of backbone for doing this type of analysis. But I do encourage folks to think ahead, because I do worry a little bit that the fall, with all these changes to the financial supports that have been made available, the fall could be a bit choppy for a lot of SMEs.
Thank you very much. As a small business, I've definitely visited some of those tools that you have, and they're definitely accessible. So I appreciate having those available to everyone. So in addition to that, going over your financial plan, what would you say is your number one piece of advice for small business right now?
So the first piece of advice is, again, make sure your workplaces are safe. Second piece of advice is to, and entrepreneurs don't need me to remind them of this, but just stay resilient. The one thing I really enjoy about spending time with entrepreneurs is the resilience. And I took you through the three examples earlier of local companies that have kind of found a way to get through these past few months. And that's what resilience looks like. And I do encourage folks to, I know it's hard and it may get harder, but again, you've come this far, just kind of keep going and find ways to seize whatever opportunities are out there. And the third piece of advice, which I just mentioned, is to really make sure that you're on top of your financials and your cash flows, and don't hesitate to reach out to BDC, where we can provide working capital loans and other forms of support. Don't hesitate to reach out to your chartered bank, because with this BCAP program, they have the tools in place to lend more, and they should be doing so. So those will be three thoughts as to where to focus.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your time today, and thank you for your support. I know that as an entrepreneur, it really means a lot to hear that support coming from you. So we appreciate you taking the time to be with us today.
Well, thanks for having me, and best of luck for the rest of the session. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before we break out into our roundtables, I wanted to remind you of two upcoming events. On Thursday, October 29th, we have our October virtual luncheon with Carrie Twigg of Career Stories Consulting. Carrie was ranked one of LinkedIn's top 10 voices, and will share how you can find, hone in, and share your business story. Registration is free for members, and it's available online. Before that event, next week, Wednesday, September 30th, we're excited to host our first virtual small business forum of the year, and we're going to be talking about mental health for business owners throughout COVID. Registration is also free for members and is available at winnipeg-chamber.com. Next, it's time to do more networking. Let us move to our breakout seminars. This roundtable is your opportunity to maximize this experience and debrief what you learned today and how you'll apply those lessons moving forward in your business. Listen carefully, because this is how it's going to work. On the left-hand side, you will see a tab that says Sessions under Stage tab in your confirmation pass. We assigned you a specific breakout room. This is important because each breakout room will have 10 attendees around that virtual table, just like you would at a luncheon. This is critical. In each breakout room, the individual whose birthday is coming up will be the conversation facilitator. If you're the facilitator, please encourage each attendee to do quick introductions. From there, there's 3 questions to guide each roundtable discussion. Here are the questions. The first one is, how did COVID-19 impact you and your business? Number 2, what was the biggest lesson that you learned during COVID-19? And number 3, what is one change that we can make in our business today to be more resilient moving forward? Okay, so now it's time to network and discuss with other members in our community, so please click the seminars button. Once your breakout session is done, you don't need to come back to the stage. The meeting will be adjourned. Happy networking.